इसलिए नई लिंक बना लिया. Let's start. तो पिछले सेशन में I guess you guys made CRUD APIs using static data. स्टैटिक डेटा यूज़ की थी और JSON की एक फाइल थी और उसमें तुम लोग ने CRUD ऑपरेशंस किए थे, क्रिएटिंग न्यू डॉक्यूमेंट्स के, अपडेटिंग डॉक्यूमेंट्स के, रीडिंग डॉक्यूमेंट्स के और डिलीटिंग डॉक्यूमेंट्स के. This whole session is gonna revolve around MongoDB. So you'll get how to make connections with the database. आपका backend database से connect कैसे होगा, and updating, creating, reading and deleting CRUD operations database में कैसे perform होंगे using backend APIs. So okay. So first of all, I want you guys to go to the MongoDB website. और यहाँ पर products में आके there are two things I want you guys to install. The first one is community server. Okay, यहाँ पर community server में आओगे, जो भी current version है Windows पे डाउनलोड कर लो. मेरे पास डाउनलोडेड है तो I won't download it right now. Once you have this downloaded, it shouldn't take too long. It should take like 2 to 3 minutes at most if you have a good internet connection. और इसमें एक ऑप्शन आएगा कि इंस्टॉल कंपस, उसे चेक नहीं करना. अगर मैं तुम लोग को एक दफ़ा चला के भी दिखा दूँ तो नो एक्चुअली कैंसल. This is the installer. Let's run this installer. Okay, मेरे पास already installed I guess. So is it this one? Okay, yeah, it's this one. ये installer खुलता है. Next करोगे. I already have it installed तो मेरे लिए थोड़ा different है. For you guys it will be different. But you will get an option to install it with MongoDB Compass. I want you to uncheck that selection क्योंकि उसमें बग आया हुआ है. वो MongoDB Compass यहाँ से इंस्टॉल नहीं हो पाता और इंस्टॉलेशन अटक जाती है. तो uncheck that box, then install. Okay. So once you've installed the MongoDB community server, then separately I want you guys to come over here और यहाँ पर MongoDB Compass install करने का option है, उसे install करेंगे. What MongoDB यहाँ से सीधा download now and you'll have the installer and up and running. तो MongoDB का जो सर्वर है बेसिकली वो डेटाबेस का सर्वर है जिस पे आपका डेटाबेस होता है. और Compass बेसिकली MongoDB की अपनी UI है. If I look up, okay, MongoDB Compass मेरे पास इंस्टॉल्ड है. MongoDB की अपनी UI है जहाँ पर आप सारे कनेक्शंस देख के जो भी आपके पास डेटाबेसेस हैं, डेटाबेस में जो कलेक्शंस हैं, जो डॉक्यूमेंट्स हैं वो देख सकते हैं. It's a UI basically to see all of your database. So let's talk about structure of databases a bit. This is not your conventional relational database. इसमें कोई tables नहीं होते, कोई relations नहीं होते. इसमें simply how it works is that you have a database. For example, we have a database called library over here और उसमें collections होता है. Library में courses होंगी, books होंगी, tables होंगी, for example, whatever. There can be many collections. So collections are kind of like tables. जैसे tables में multiple rows होती हैं, जैसे courses का table होगा उसमें सारे courses list होंगे in each row. वैसे ही collection is a table. When you go to collections, you can see the documents. These are like the rows of the table. ये एक entry है library में. Library के courses में एक entered document है ये. Okay. So just wanted to show this to you guys कि इस तरीके का एक structure होता है. अब once we've known that, okay, so मैं एक नया folder बनाऊंगा. I'll go inside the folder. I'll open the folder in command line and I'm gonna create a node project. npm init. Enter. I'll enter all of this and then yes and enter. So if I go inside the project, I have a package.json file. So let's open this with VS Code now. Code dot. So if I go to the package.json file, again my main point is index.js. So I'm going to create a new file called index.js. Okay, so as of such right now, I do not have any dependencies. मेरे पास कोई package installed नहीं है, कोई node modules का folder नहीं है. You guys should already know now what this means अगर तुम लोग ने पहला 2 session देखा हो तो. So to connect your Node.js project to MongoDB, we use a package which is very famously used. It's called Mongoose. Mongoose एक library है basically. if you see, it has over 2 million weekly downloads और पूरे वर्ल्ड वाइड में ये लाइब्रेरी यूज़ की जाती है to basically make CRUD changes into your database. जो Node.js communicate करता है database से, it's using this library. So we can simply install this library. Let's copy this from here, npm mongoose, npm I mongoose, और यहाँ terminal में इसी directory में let's do an npm I mongoose and let's install. So MongoDB is the actual database and Mongoose is a node package जो हम use करते हैं MongoDB में operations perform करने के लिए from our node project. So obviously you guys should know the difference अगर कोई बोले Mongoose और MongoDB में क्या फर्क है. तो okay, now that you can see node modules का मेरे पास folder आ गया है, package में मेरे पास dependencies में Mongoose का version आ गया है और node modules का folder है, so we're good to go now. The first thing I'm going to do is obviously I'm going to import Mongoose. So const mongoose is equals to require Mongoose. Okay, and I save that. After I import Mongoose, the first step that I have to do is that I have to connect to a Mongoose database. Okay, so I'm going to do a Mongoose has a function called connect, mongoose.connect, and इस mongoose.connect में एक string जाती है जिसमें आपका URL जाता है. So I can simply write abhi. Okay, this is a very important concept. Before I connected to this, okay, so let's disconnect. Right now I don't have any connections. I am currently connecting to a localhost string. Okay, localhost का मतलब होता है 0.0.0.0 Node.js में दिखता है. मतलब ये सर्वर सिर्फ locally मेरे मशीन पे है. If any other guy tries to access this database, they can't because it's not actually hosted on a server. So फिलहाल we'll just perform the operations on a localhost database, and to actually use deployed database, it's very simple. You can just come on this MongoDB community. You can go to MongoDB, and you will have a start free documentation over here. You can start free, and you can register for your cluster which is already deployed. The only difference connecting to a localhost database and a deployed database will be this connection string that you write over here. So यहाँ पर I guess the connection string will be like MongoDB / 0.0.0.0, and you will, after the slash, you will write whatever you wanted to connect to. So for example, if you want to name your database, for this I'll write session or GDSC session. I'll name it GDSC session. Okay, so I'll do that. And actually, let me just confirm it if it's written similarly. Yeah, MongoDB /00. Okay. Okay, let's go back. Let me just confirm one thing. Okay. I want to make sure I'm not making any mistake in the. This is the folder and index.js. Oh, I didn't save it. Mongoose.connect, and this will be my string, and I wanted to connect to GDSC session. And once this is done, I want to fire a function, or actually I can straight up use .done. Okay, so if you guys have studied a little bit of JavaScript, a basic JavaScript has promises. This mongoose.connection function will run asynchronously. So if there is one specific function that I want to run after this promise is completed, after this line of code is executed, then we can use something called .done functions. Okay, so once this connection is made, I wanted to log that connected console.log connected to database. And similarly, if it fails, then I want to catch the error over here, and I want to log the error, console.log error. Now we'll save this, and we'll go to our terminal, and we'll do node index.js. Okay, great. So it shows connected to database. Now you guys might have a question, okay, we're connected to the localhost, but we do not see any GDSC session showing up over here. So that's completely normal. Once you create a model and a document, then it will be shown in the UI. Otherwise, it isn't shown. Even if it's made, even if it's connected to database already, it's not going to be shown. Okay. So, okay. So the first thing we're done with is making our connection to the database. Once this dot then function is fired, we can be sure that this was successful and it's already connected. Because if this was unsuccessful, it would go into the catch block and it would log the error. So after this, we'll come to schemas. So if I go to library and I go to a specific document, I have a schema. Okay, so I can show it from here. So every MongoDB collection has a schema. So you need to tell it what to expect from before. So when I made this courses object collection, then I defined a schema saying, okay, you need to, this underscore ID is auto-generated. This ID is auto-generated as a unique identifier. Okay. You need to tell it to expect a name as a string. Just like when you define a SQL table, you create a table in MySQL, you need to tell all of the fields, okay, in the first column expect name, in this you need to define the schema, okay. So I would expect a string in the name, I would expect a string in author. In tags, I would expect an array. In tags, I would expect an array with the first two indexes. These are the two indexes of the array. And if published is a boolean variable, and date is current date. Okay. Anything that starts with an underscore generally is an auto-generated field. Okay. So let's do that. The first thing that we need to define is that we need to create a schema. So we're gonna create a course schema. So if you guys, okay, let's actually go with course only. So we're studying a course actually. So mongoose dot schema, and we need to define the schema. Okay. So the first schema that we can have is name, and as we said, name is a string. Then what else? Uh, author. Author also needs to be a string. Then tags. In tags, we can have an array of strings. So array is shown by these square brackets. And once our tag is done, we can write if published. Okay, is the course published or not? This will be a boolean variable. And lastly, we'll have a date variable. Okay, so in this we don't always want the user to input the date themselves that the course is being created. So we can put type as date in this object. So we can put the type as date, and we can give a default value. Okay, so default is equals to date dot now. So this should be fine. Sorry. So we defined a schema that every time, let me just ensure that, just give me a second. Yeah, okay. So it is right, default date dot now, okay. So now that we have a schema, we actually need to create a model, or in other words, model is same as the collection. In Mongoose, it's called a model. In MongoDB, it's called a collection, okay. So to create a model, we can write const course. Courses is a model, okay. Course is equals to mongoose dot model, and in this we can give it a name. So it's course, and over here we need to pass the schema that it will follow. Okay, as you can see, the VS Code helps you. It tells you that the second thing that you need to pass is a schema. So we'll pass the course schema. So now we can see that we have a course created with the Mongoose model. And our next step that we're gonna do is that we're gonna basically create the first step of our CRUD functionality, which is creating a document. So we have our schema, we have our model. And if I run this code, you guys won't really see a difference. I'll run it and show it because we still haven't added a document to it yet. See, connected to database. And if I go to my MongoDB and I refresh it, okay, so a GDSC session database is created. You can see it. And if we go into courses, it has no data, okay, but a courses collection was created. Anyone has a question?
हाँ साथ फॉन्ट का साइज बढ़ा दो।
अच्छा, okay, sure. Is this better? Anas, ये सही है?
हाँ ठीक ठीक है।
Okay, perfect. So model बन गया. Now the first thing that we want to do is we want to create a document. So इसका एक अलग से function बना लेते हैं, create course, और let's give it an arrow function. और ये create course का एक function हो गया. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is ये हम अपना एक वेरिएबल बना देंगे स्मॉल सी से, और हम इसमें बोलेंगे कोर्स डॉट कोर्स डॉट सॉरी कोर्स sorry, this actually is a class. So instead of writing course dot new, it's new course, and you pass in the object that we want to create. So now we need to make sure that we follow the schema that we made. So similarly, we're going to give a name object, and in the name we can write web development. In the author we can write Saad. In the tags we have an array of tags. So string arrays we can write node.js. The second string we can pass is react.js, and so on. Is published is false. Okay. So we have this document, and it's not necessary for us to pass the date because we already described date. Default property is date.now. So if we create a new course, and now this course is created, but this course was created in our backend. Okay, we actually need to save this to the database as well. So it's very simple to do this. We'll make this an asynchronous function, and over here we're gonna write whatever const result is equals to await course dot save. So again, if you guys don't know basic JavaScript, then I'd suggest you look into it. But just to give a short explanation, this dot then and dot catch is used when you have a promise. And to handle promises, you can also use async and await. I use both of the syntaxes. This is the newer syntax in the ES6 version. So whenever you have an asynchronous function, that means if there is any such statement, which is a promise basically means, so how Node.js works is that every line of code is, when we study Java or C++ or Python or anything in our first year, how we're taught is that code will go line by line, okay? But that's not actually the case. A lot of the times, a code can run asynchronously. So that means if this line is taking very long, your code won't stay on hold. It will actually execute rest of the statements, and in the background, it'll be waiting for this result. So it actually makes the code faster. It's a concept called multi-threading as well. You have multiple threads running at the same time, and you have different lines of codes on different threads. So to handle that, we have promises, right? So if there is specifically some specific line of code that you want to make sure is executed after this line is completed, because this is a promise, this can take long. So you write a dot then block, and you fire a function. Okay, so when this line is executed, then you can fire this. So this line will only execute after this is completed. So similarly, this is also a way you need an asynchronous function to write await. This course.save is similar to mongoose.connect, and it returns a promise. So using async await is actually a newer form of handling promises. So now after we get this line, result stores the promise returned, then only the code will move forward. So the next line won't actually be executed unless this line is already executed within this asynchronous function. So now we'll just console.log result, and we're gonna save it. And now let's run our code again. Control C. Node index.js connected to database. Oh, sorry. So I have made a mistake over here, and the mistake is that I made this function, but I never actually called this function. Okay. So I just need to call this function over here as well. And let's rerun our code. and see. So it showed connected to database from this promise. And after it saved the document, it shows us that name web development author Saad is published, and see automatically it assigned the date to the current date. Okay, and now if I go to my UI and I refresh it, I can see a document was created. So we successfully completed the create part of the CRUD operations. This is how objects are created. So let's move on now. So let's come to the read part. So how do you read objects and how do you filter objects? So I'm going to comment this line out and I'm going to create a new function called find courses. Actually, let's do the read and updating functionality in the same function since it'll be a lot quicker. And let's create an update course function over here. And if I were to, uh, so there are basically two ways of updating documents in MongoDB using Mongoose. The first one is actually finding the object and then updating it and then saving it again. So I'm going to be focusing on this method. The second method is you don't actually need to fetch the documents. You just need to put a condition. So you go inside the MongoDB collection, you scan through the documents, and wherever it finds that condition to be true, it'll simply update it. So I'm going to go with the first option over here since we'll also do the read functionality of the CRUD operations in that because we'll have to first fetch the documents. So to fetch documents, if I write const document is equals to course, we need to access our model and we have a function called course.find. See, if I write find, I have multiple functions, okay? I have course.find, I have course.find by ID, find by ID and delete, find by ID and remove, find by ID and update, and so on. There are many options. So we'll be using simple find option. If, okay, for the sake of it, let's actually create multiple courses and add it to our database before we run this, okay? So I'll just make this mobile development, React, React native, and I'll make this true, and I'll uncomment this, and I'll run it again. So we have some more objects, and let's create one more document where we have published true, we have Ibrahim, we have front end development, we have React JS, and we have Vue.js. Okay. So all I'm doing is basically just creating new documents so that we have stuff to filter through. And if I refresh this, now we have three documents, okay? So now I'm going to comment this function out because every time I run my code, I don't want a new same document to be created, okay? So I won't call this function now and comment this out again. And now let's run this course.find. Okay, so similarly again course.find, if we hover over this, we see that it returns a promise, okay? Let's hover over this. And can you actually see if it returns a promise? Okay, you can. But it actually returns a promise. I know from experience. So we can put an await over here and it will actually wait to execute the statement before it moves forward. And now we can do a console.log document. And finally, we can call this function update course. So for now, it's not updating anything. We're just simply finding. But I want you guys to see what happens if I update this document. Okay, so what happened is it basically got me an array of three objects, okay? Can you guys actually see this command line? Anas, is this readable? या फिर इसे भी zoom कर दूं? Okay, I'm assuming it's readable, okay? So once you have this array of three objects, what happened was what course.find, if we pass an empty parameter of objects in course.find, what it does is basically it guesses all the objects in in our collection. Okay, so as you can see we had three documents. It sent us an array of all three documents. So we can also add like filters to it. So if I were to write course.find name, and the name has to be Saad, and if I were to rerun this code, okay, so that actually didn't work. Okay, why did that now? Okay, sorry. The name is not Saad. So there's no course with name Saad. So it basically gave me an empty array. So again, my bad. This will be author and not name. So if we save this and we were to rerun this, so now it just returns me one object instead of all three. So this object is basically acting as a filter. Okay, I can get different objects. If I were to test another thing, I can simply write is published is true. So again, this is a condition. I would save it. I would and I would run this, and I would get two objects that have is published as true. So this is how you query documents using Mongoose. So similarly, once you have done this, we can add multiple conditions. Okay. So I want the document that is published is true, and I want the document that, for example, contains the author as Ibrahim, and I'll save this and run it. And see, I get one object which has author Ibrahim and is published as true. So similarly, you can actually experiment with this. There are many things you can do. There are also, if we go to the Mongoose website and we go to the documentation, and it's very important to be reading documentation of these, because just like I taught you that this is the way everything is done, it's possible that a newer version, okay, where is all my projects? Why can't I see them? Okay, for some reason I can't open folder, and then select this folder. Okay, so it's very important to actually be updated with all of the documentation, because as you can see, if I go to my package.json over here, Mongoose is version 6.7.2, right? It's possible that within a day or two, this package is actually updated and a newer version comes out, for example, 7.0.0, and the documentation might change. The way you do stuff might change. So even we have to be up to date with the documentation. Every time it has happened with me multiple times that I'm working on something and I'm like, why is it not working? And when I go and check the documentation, I find out that the older version is actually deprecated and a newer version has come out and the syntax is different. So it's very important to be up to date with all of the documentations. Okay, so even other than the npm page, I think Mongoose will have a website on it. Sorry, Mongoose. So see, Mongoose has its own website and it has read the docs. So if I go to read the documents, it has everything. Okay, creating models, documents, sub documents, queries. If we go to queries, I just used this one function and showed you guys how it works. Okay, so you can have many things. So for example, if you want age greater than 18, for example, if you have an integer, then you can write stuff like this. You have comparative operators. So GTE basically means greater than equals to. So this would basically give you all documents that have the name John and are at least 18 years old. So basically greater than equals to 18 years old. So yeah, it's at the end of the day, it's very important to read the documentation, and basically right now I'm just giving you a basic demo so that you guys can get started with all of this. So yeah, let's save this now. And now coming to the update part, we basically learned how to filter it. So now, oh sorry, I have the wrong file open, I guess. What just happened? I guess I lost progress on all of my files somehow. Just a second. Oh wow. Okay guys, just give me a second. I'll just rewrite the code for connection. Then console dot log connected dot catch console dot log error and actually pass the error dot code here. Yeah, okay. Okay, that's that's better now. Okay, so we have the progress back, so we didn't actually lose it. So yeah, we had this update course. So now we have actually found the document. So once we have the document, we can access the document. Okay. So we just logged the document and we had an array of documents. Since I know that this is just going to return to me one document, now what I want to do is that I want to update the author of this document of this course and I want to change its name. So what I'm going to do is that document and at the zeroth index, documents are in an array, okay? Course.find returns you an array of all of the objects. Dot, it's the author that I want to change. So I can access the author attribute and I can change the author to Saad. And just to be sure, I can console.log this document and see if the author has actually changed. So again, I am finding an author, I'm finding courses that is published and it's true, and author is Ibrahim. And then I change the document's author to Saad, and then I'm logging the document. Now if I run this, okay, so see over here the course was front-end development and the author was Ibrahim, and now it's front-end development and the author is Saad. So we have successfully made change to the document, but if I were to go to my MongoDB UI and I were to refresh it, there would be front-end development and it would be Ibrahim. It hasn't actually updated on the MongoDB UI. The reason for that is I have just made the change to the document locally and I need to actually save it. So there's one small line of code similarly. So I can write const result is equals to await document. Okay, so it's very important. You can't actually save the whole array of documents, okay? You need to individually save each document. So document.save. Notice how I can just do document.save. It would give me an error, okay, if I were to run this. Let's actually run this and see if it gives me an error, or it might actually work. So, okay, it gives an error because .save does not exist on an array. You can only save a specific document. So, if I were to save this and I were to log the this basically returns everything that was updated in the database, okay, after saving. So, I would log it and I would run it and I would see that this actually gave me a result of an object which was updated in the database. So if I were to go to my UI now and I were to refresh it, see, authors updated to Saad. So I guess that's perfect. That's exactly what we wanted. So now similarly, the last thing that's remaining is deleting a course. Okay. So we have something called const delete course is equals to async and so I'll comment this update course out and we'll actually shift this up here. And now if I want to delete a course, again we have many functions for this. So simply we can do course dot delete. So you have many options, right? If you just want to delete one or you want to delete many. So what we'll do right now is that we'll delete many, okay? And what we're gonna delete is wherever the course is already published, we want to actually delete it from our database. So the filter we'll add is publish is true, and we'll save that. And once again, this returns a promise. So we're gonna save this result is equals to await course dot delete many, and then we can simply log the result, and we can run this. Sorry, delete course. Okay, so we save this index.js connected to database. Okay, see, it's basically what this results in is this promise returns an object that actually tells us if what we carried out was correct, if it was acknowledged, so it returns true, and it tells us the deleted count, the number of objects that were deleted. So if I were to go to my UI, I were to see that if the one course was is published as false, the other two course had the is published property as true. So it was actually supposed to delete these two documents, and if we refresh our database, we see that those two documents are actually deleted. So we've actually deleted the documents. So if you guys remember the last, our last, just let me open the code for the last session as well, and just give me 1 second. I'll check the session. Yeah, okay. So I'll share my screen again. This was the code that was basically worked on by Anas in our later session last Sunday. So if I were to go to index.js in this code, you guys made some routes and you guys made changes to JSON data. How it actually works is that this similar route would be made, and instead of making and using basic JavaScript functions to actually change your data in JSON, you would actually be writing queries like these, okay? You'd be writing code like these within these routes. So assume I was actually making a website and I actually wanted to show courses available on the website. So the backend would look something similar to this. It would have routes, okay? So it would maybe have a route such as slash book slash ad, and it would be a post route. That means I wanted to, sorry, not slash book, slash course slash ad. So it could have been a course route to actually add a course. And in the request, I could have taken the name and the author. Actually, let's make a route. Let's make a route. So let's quickly install Express. So we actually have a lot of time left. So let's install Express, okay, in our project. Okay, so now we have Express installed. NPMI. No, sorry. Const Express is equals to require Express. Uh, const app is equals to Express. And so again, similar thing. You've already done this. You've imported request and you've started an app. Okay, let's copy these two lines also. So you're gonna get it in JSON. Actually, do I have Postman on this? Oh, so we won't actually be able to check it. Okay, that's fine. How quickly can I install Postman? Okay, that's good. It'll take less than a minute. So while it's installing in the background, I can actually run my code. And so now we're basically gonna comment out all of these function calls, and we're gonna create routes. Okay, so we're gonna create a get route, app.get, and the route would be basically slash courses courses. This route would give me every single object. Okay, it would return to me all courses. So how this would work is that I basically want to get all courses. So I would be actually using this specific line, okay? So I'll just copy it from here to save time, and I'm gonna do a cons document. Okay, so I can't use await because it's not an asynchronous function, so that's not that big of a problem. I can just make it an async function, and let me just check on the progress. You need Postman to actually check your APIs if they're working or not, okay? Postman or any other agent. I generally use Postman, but it's not installed on this PC right now. So actually I'll walk you guys through the installation of Postman as well. It'll be simple. Sign in. Okay, so that's great. We've installed Postman. Okay, so let's come back to our route. So what we wanted was we want to get all courses on this specific route. Okay, so we're gonna remove this filter. We want all courses. So now that we have our documents, we can simply return rest dot status 200 dot send, and I want to send all of the documents that I got. Okay, so I would send documents like this. So a very simple API with no checking, nothing. I'm just getting all of the courses in my database, and I'm simply sending it with a 200 response on this specific path. And now we'll have to do something called app.listen on port 8000. Let's make it port 8000, and we'll have to actually start our backend server. So I'll just log console.log server is running on port 8000. If I were to save this and I were to run it, okay, so server running on port 8000 and it's connected to database. Great. Okay, so just a very great example to show you guys how promises work. Even though this line is actually towards the end of the code and this log is the latest log that I've done, uh, this was actually logged before. So since I told you guys that this is a promise and it actually takes longer time to run, so see how Node.js actually moves on to executing other lines of code instead of just waiting over here and waiting for this to complete. And as soon as this line was run and it logged the server running on port 8000, and as soon as this promise was actually completed, this function was fired and connected to database was logged. So this is how promises basically work. Okay, if I were to go to Postman, I were to go to workspaces, my workspace, and I were to create a new HTTP request. It is a GET request. It is on localhost 8000, and the route is slash courses. Okay, very simple. So my okay. See, I ran this and I actually got the this response 200. Okay, I think Anna should have taught you guys in the previous session that 200 responses. Yeah, okay. So 200 is an okay response. That's the response you actually want in your APIs when you send a request. So now our route is running on slash courses, and it actually returns all of the documents within our MongoDB database. So to get a basic idea of how things work in the actual industry, this is how a backend would be working. This is all a backend developer's job is. He basically creates APIs which perform CRUD operations, and obviously they're not as simple as this. They're more complex and there's a lot more to it. But the gist of it is basically this data will then be used by the front end developer. The work of backend developer finishes over here, okay? So he'll make this API, he'll be like, oh, perfect, it's giving a 200 response, it's giving all of the data, that's perfect. Now the front end developer would actually start designing the front end, and he would be calling this API. He would be hitting this exact route at get, and for the information, he'll get this. So basically, the work of backend and front end is unrelated. A front end developer can start working on his design, his UI, and everything, and he can basically work with fake data. Okay, he doesn't actually need all of the data to be there. He can have some mock data, and while the backend person is working on the APIs. Once the backend person is completed with the APIs, the front end can simply hit this API and get all of this data. And the rest of the code would remain exactly the same. So this is how development works. A front end guy would basically design a page for courses, all courses we offer, and then the data we would be getting from is he'd be hitting this API and he'd be accessing this name tag, this author tag, these tags, published, and he'd be using this data to actually populate his front end. So this is one end. If we were to create another post app.post route and we actually wanted to add a course, so add, maybe you can pass the route as add. Okay, so again this would be an async function. It would have a request and a response, and this would be what would do. So now we basically want to create a course, right? So instead of actually writing all of this over here, we can just copy this code and paste it over here. So a new course we're creating. Okay, so this time the name actually, I don't want the name to be this. Okay, I want to get the name from the user. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add request dot body dot name, whatever we get in the body, and then I'm going to add a request dot author. In the tags we can again ask uh, the request dot body dot tag, and I actually missed the dot body over here, my bad. And is published. Okay, so initially we would want is published to be false. Okay, we don't want to ask this from the user. We don't want the user to pass us this. We just want these three things, and we'll just keep a basic check. If rec dot body dot name doesn't exist, okay, so it's empty, so we can just add a not operator. Then we can simply do a res dot send 400. 400 stands for bad request. Okay, it's basically when it's the user hitting the API, he's at wrong, he's sending a bad request. So I would send an object saying message, and the message would be name is required. Required. Okay. And similarly, I can just copy this for the other fields as well instead of wasting my time. So I do Control C, Control V, Control V. So I need author as well. So I have author over here, and author is required. I do tags over here, and I do tags are required. Okay. Uh, so this is basically kind of like a break statement. Once this is executed, it's like a return statement. Your endpoint stops working. So if this piece of code is executed, this won't execute. Okay. So we're doing a result await course dot save, and once this result is saved, we can write a res dot status to 100 dot send message course created successfully. Okay, now I would save this, and we actually don't need this result. If we wanted to, we could return this. Actually, let's do that. With a message, I want to return the result as well. Course added, and this would be an object, and I would just print my result. So this was the course added. Okay, and I would save it. And now we actually need to test this out in Postman. So now it's a post route, as you can see. So I'm gonna do post localhost 8000. I'm gonna change this to add. And okay, so if I were to send my request right now, it would give me an error. Okay, it says cannot post add. Okay, why can it not post add? So that's weird. Is my Oh, sorry, I made changes to it, so I need to rename the file. Sorry. Node index.js connected to database. Now if I were to run this, okay. So it gives me response status of bad request. Okay. So it's a bad request because again we require the name. Okay, sorry, I this should be status. Status and status. I'll save it again and I'll rerun this actually, and then we can send this. Okay, so it basically sends us the error that name is required. So I will go to the body. In the request body, I'll choose raw, and because we're expecting JSON over here, period express.json. So I would simply go to the body. I would change this to JSON, and I would pass this an object. Okay. So the object's first field would be name, and in the name I would pass uh, APIs with Mongoose, and then in the author I can pass Saad. In the tags, okay, so this will be in JSON format. Okay. In the tags I can pass an array of a string which can be Node.js, and the second string can be development. And okay, so that these are the three fields that I actually require. Okay, so now I'll simply send the request with these three fields. Oh, is my code not running? Okay, sorry, my code is not running. And actually let's change this to else if else if and else condition. And if I were to rerun this, I want to send the request. Okay, so it basically gave me a 200 response and it sent me a message, course created successfully, and it gave me a course added object with the course that was created. Okay, so just like how I sent the result over here with the course created successfully and course added result, and basically all of this is not done by the code itself. Okay, I'm not writing code for this. This was dynamically created. So what would happen is there would be input fields. So in a front end website page, a user would have options to add a course. He would click add a course. They would ask them for these three fields. Okay, they would be like, please enter name of course, please enter author of course, please identify some tags for the course, and the user would enter the names, the user would enter the author, and the user would enter the tags. And when the user would click create, all that would happen was that the front end is gonna hit this endpoint. And just like it hit this endpoint, this course would be created. And if a successful response is returned by the backend, then the front end would simply show that response. Okay, your course was created. And in the backend, in the database, if we refresh it, our course was actually created. So this is how things work. Okay, I have created a post endpoint and a get endpoint to actually show you with validation, to show you how the general API works. Okay, so I guess it's time for questions.